I did a shoot recently with Joao and Edson, and I photographed both of these professional dancers in the studio. And I want to share with you today the artistic side of that process and then the technical side of the process. So I'm going to give you the why first, and then I'm going to share with you the how. On this shoot with these two professional dancers, I really didn't have a finite plan going into it. I created a mood board with a few examples and I shared that with them. But when working with professional dancers, like you saw on maybe a shoot that I did with Zach and Maya a few months ago, what I like to do is sort of set the stage and provide a space where the photography can happen and then let them perform. Because as professional dancers, they have spent their entire life and career trying to figure out how to visually present themselves for an audience. So I might as well let them do their thing and then capture it. Do my thing to make it look really good and to refine things, but let them sort of lead and do their thing and come up with the posing that they're planning on doing. So, or thinking about doing. And so leading into the shoot, I had this idea that I was going to be freezing motion. But the poses that they came up with after looking at my mood board and thinking about the things that they were going to do actually were a lot more emotional than I had expected. And so it was really a nice, cool surprise that, well, it was completely unexpected. So I'm going to talk about how it was that I got started on the shoot and then, really what happened. So they started off by putting on two different outfits, and on the tights there was an orange stripe and there was a blue stripe. And I've been doing a lot with color harmony recently, especially when producing my latest lighting handbook, which is all about lighting with gels and colored LEDs. And that entire handbook goes over color harmony, really. And so when I looked at these two different colors, I put them into the Sessions EDU color harmony calculator online that I always use. And I thought about their skin tones and the backgrounds that I had, and I quickly decided that I would end up doing tetradic color harmony. And that's just when you have, I believe it's also called split complementary, but it's the idea that you draw a square on the color wheel and use the four colors that are on that square. So I thought that what I was going to do is use the orange and the blue and the purple background and their skin tone to create that color harmony. And when I'm working with a paper backdrop, what I'm thinking about mostly is creating a very saturated, high contrast image. And so that's what I did as I started out. And I really, truth be told, didn't like the results. Sure, they were technically fine, but it didn't feel really artistic and there wasn't really any emotion behind it. And so I just wasn't really moved by the images. So I actually encouraged them to change their outfit. And when I saw that they changed into these matching brown outfits, I'm not sure if we want to call these tights or bottoms or what exactly, but you can maybe let me know in the comments what you think this garment is called. But when they changed into this, I immediately thought about a brown painted paper backdrop, a brown painted canvas backdrop that I have from Gravity Backdrops. And so I went ahead and I put that up. And then I started shooting and I realized rather quickly that it wasn't wide enough. And at first I thought, oh, we'll just fake it in post. It'll be fine. Well, I have two of these matching backdrops. So I actually went through the trouble of getting another set of light stands, both of them with grip arms on there, and setting up that second backdrop there layered behind the first one. And the reason for that was now I would get not only a wider background or a wider set to work with, but I also would have this neat layering effect that would happen when one background was in front of the other and there was a shadow there cast onto the background. And so I thought that would add to the artistic feeling and nature of the images overall. So let's step back for just a second and talk about the purple background images. So of course I had to retouch a couple of those for the dancers, and I ended up taking them into Evoto, which is an AI photo editing software and the sponsor of today's video. And good thing for me, they just added a new AI solid backdrop distraction removal feature, and it will allow you to take out distracting elements like light stands, or let's say the top of this backdrop and this lighting modifier. And you can see how easy it is to clean up the backdrop, including removing footprints. Evoto will also help you retouch the skin in just a few clicks. So if you want to try out Evoto, click on the link in the description to get a special offer. Then you'll be able to save tons of time and get back to shooting. And speaking of shooting, let's get back to this shoot with Joao and Edson. Next, I want to talk about the lighting. So I started off putting an Elinchrom 190 centimeter indirect octabox. Just know that's a big ass octabox. Odd that I should say big ass octabox because it was at the end of my new Kupo big boom, which is this really cool geared boom that you could use, or that I used, on a crank stand from Studio Titan. And what it allows me to do is get very large modifiers into position and then turn a series of cranks in order to manipulate the position of that modifier. I used to, when I did this shoot with Zach and Maya months ago, I used a regular sort of boom and I got the light, this modifier, out over the set. And then I had to use a light stand with a grip arm in order to push it into the correct position. Well, I didn't have to do that this time because I had all of this technology working for me. And I just got this boom, so I love it. So thanks for indulging me to talk about it. So I used the boom to get that light out there, and then I pitched it just a little bit towards the camera so that it would act primarily as both a hair light and a fill light, sort of lighting the overall scene. As I used my light meter, I determined that I wanted this light to be about 2/3 brighter than my camera's exposure. So originally I was shooting at 1/200th at f8 at ISO 400. And so I turned this light up until it metered at f8 and 2/3. And you could see it here with this image that I took with the purple backdrop. Now, I want to apologize to both of the dancers because I'm sure that they hate this photo of themselves. But as I looked through all of the photos, I actually didn't take any with just this modifier. Then I added an Elinchrom indirect strip softbox on each side of the set, pointed back towards the dancers. And these lights collectively metered at f4 when metered there in the middle of the set. So what I was doing with those lights was just using them to create sort of this edge accent lighting to sort of surround the dancers and give me an overall outline on their body. And I wanted that to be the brightest part of the frame. And I wanted that top light to also sort of give an edge over the top of their body. And then I wanted that light that was coming from the Octa that was overhanging the set. I wanted that to sort of create my base exposure, if you will, in the overall shot. So what I was looking for was something that was very moody, that also had these highlights and added this sort of three-dimensionality. And that paired, I think, with the painted backdrop that had the texture on it, the layer in the painted backdrop, I think all of that worked really well together artistically in order to get the final image. But before we move on, I just wanted to say, if you could please like, subscribe, and sign up for the bell, I would really appreciate it. Also, if you want to help support me to make more videos like this one, please click on the links on screen or in the description, as that will help make me a small commission, and that will support me to make more videos like this one. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't give you alternatives for these modifiers. The reason why I'm using these particular modifiers is that they're very big, and I want to use them in order to light a very large area and to get really even lighting top to bottom. So if you don't have a 75 or 74.5 inch, depending on who's marketing it, 190 centimeter Octabox to put out there over the set, you could use a 5-foot or 7-foot umbrella, or you could use a 5-foot Octa. If you use something smaller like a 1 meter or 3-foot Octa, it could work. It's just not going to give you that nice even light across, two people's bodies as they've got their arms out there to the side doing different poses. So that's probably not the best thing. And also keep in mind that this light modifier was out there over the set, and oftentimes I had one of the models or dancers looking upwards, and so this light became their key light on their face. Now, when it comes to the strip softboxes, again, the reason why I'm using them is that they're very large and it's going to give even lighting head to toe in this sort of full body portrait lighting. And speaking of full body portrait lighting, I actually have a video that's all about that topic. So if you'd like to check that out, I will link to it. But in that video, I also talked about using 1x3 foot or 30x90 centimeter strip softboxes and standard, grid reflectors as well. And what I demonstrated in that video was that it just sort of gives you those medium-sized strip softboxes or small strip softboxes. What they give you is sort of a area that's illuminated, but then it falls off pretty quickly. So you're not going to get lighting from head to toe. And actually, when I photographed some NBA players doing some simulated action, I actually used two of these giant strip softboxes stacked on top of each other. And the reason for that was because when I shot somebody who was 7 feet tall and I needed to photograph them full body, I wanted to make sure that they had a highlight going all the way from their ankle to their wrist and beyond. Sometimes they were shooting the basketball and I wanted the light to be on the side of the basketball. So using a very small strip softbox or light modifier in the back as an edge light, it is okay, but it's not ideal because it's not going to give you that top to bottom lighting. And if I used the 7-inch reflector, it would have been really isolated and maybe just struck them, from the shoulder to the hip or something like that. And it just wouldn't have been as nice. So a lot of manufacturers make these 1x6 foot, give or take, strip softboxes. And they also make 1x4 foot, give or take, modifiers. That's 180 centimeters tall or 120 centimeters tall. So something like that would be far better than just using the grid reflector that comes with your lights. So that's something to keep in mind as well. And also think about placement. So I actually started off by placing them basically right next to the background. So if I'm the subject, just think that it's basically as far back as I could reach. That's where the light would be. And the reason for that, it creates a really nice outline on the models. However, some of the times, like I had Joao turned to the side and I needed to light his face. And so I would bring that strip softbox from that side and I would bring it forward. In fact, I played with them all during the shoot, moving them backwards and moving them forwards in order to get the lighting pattern that I was looking for, including getting that really nice Rembrandt lighting on his face. And so that was really important that I got the light positioned in exactly the right location. And that's why you can see this image where I photographed them with just the strip softboxes. That's because I was making sure that I had the lights in just the right location in order to get that Rembrandt or short lighting. It's actually both. He's short lit and it's a Rembrandt lighting pattern across his face. The Rembrandt lighting pattern just means that there is a triangle shape of a light under his eye opposite of that main light. So as that light came across there, that's what I was going for. So where I positioned the light was rather crucial. And that was part of the lighting setup for this photo shoot. In fact, it was really crucial here on the final look of the day when I made multiple adjustments in order to get things in just the right location and sort of refine the pose. I don't know how Joao and Edson came up with this pose, but it was just really beautiful. And when I took the picture and I saw it on the back of the camera or on the computer, I absolutely loved it. I felt like it looked like a painting and it made the entire day worth it. So going into the shoot, I thought that I was going to be freezing motion, probably because I just had a bit of a bias having worked with dancers before. And what Joao and Edson actually ended up doing was coming up with these really emotional poses that were kind of static. They could hit the pose usually and hold it. And I would just photograph that pose. And sometimes though there was a little movement, but it wasn't enough to need to worry about doing anything special to stop it. 1, 2, 3, go. But I want to go over here for you briefly what you would do if you needed to stop movement. And I actually have a whole video about this concept and it's called flash. The video is not called flash duration, but the concept is called flash duration and I will link to it. So in general, what you need to do or what freezes motion in the studio is the total time it takes for your flash to discharge its light. So that's known as the flash duration. When it starts and then when it stops. And what happens is usually the light comes out of your flash and it's very bright and then it decreases over time. And so the shorter you make that pulse happen, the more frozen things will be. And so if you get that flash duration to be around a 3,000th of a second, then you'll be able to freeze motion. So on different brands of flashes, they have a mode for flash duration. Godox calls it color mode on and color mode off. Profoto calls it normal and freeze, I believe. And then Elinchrom, I believe, calls it standard and action. So you get better color across the range with the light if you're in that normal or standard mode, and you'll get better flash duration if you're in that freeze or action mode. So that's the reason why you want to use that approach overall. Usually with most of these lights, let me rephrase that. What's going to happen with most lights is as you decrease the power, it will shorten the flash duration. Because think of it like this. Your flash is storing energy, and that energy is like water in a bucket. And the less water that you have in the bucket, the quicker it can discharge the light. It can get rid of that water. So that's why you want to, usually with most lights, and you'll have to check the specs, reduce the power input because that will speed up how quickly the light can get rid of it. So in Elinchrom, that's around 1/8 power or power setting 3.1. And I would expect that Profoto would be a similar fraction in Godox as well. Elinchrom, Godox, and Flashpoint actually have a scale with the flash duration on the side, and if you're at about a 3,000th of a second or shorter, that will freeze movement. So that's something to think about, and you should watch that video if you want a deep dive on this topic, but that's sort of the shortened version of it. The final thing that I want to address is the color grading for these photos. So normally what I do when I'm shooting in the studio is I just set the camera to daylight and I tether into Capture One, and whatever it automatically applies to daylight images, it does. I let it do its thing, and normally that looks good for me. Sometimes I make a little bit of adjustment, but not very much. For these images, when I did that, they just felt rather cold and lifeless. And so I wanted to really create a sense of warmth in these images. So it would have that overall vibe. And I wanted the garments, the backgrounds, and the skin tones really to come together and gel to make that monochromatic color harmony and just give us that great warm feeling. So I increased the white balance about 1,000 degrees Kelvin to really warm up the image. The next thing I did is add one of Capture One's Beyond film emulation stocks. This one right here, which is called K, which I guess you could assume that K stands for Kodak. That's what I think it stands for, because those Kodak film stocks were really sort of golden. And I added that and it really brought the image together. I also have film emulation presets for Lightroom, so you can check that out at the link below. So to wrap things up, I would just really encourage you to try something different like this if this isn't the type of photography that you usually do. Just doing something that's fun and artistic and making beautiful images can really help recharge your batteries. I know that mine were drawn down a little bit making all the content I've been making lately, and this shoot was exactly what I needed. In fact, I told them that as soon as it was over. If you don't have all of this gear, don't let that be a barrier to your trying it out. You could just use one light with a large umbrella and try it in different locations. Maybe use it to short light the subjects in order to have that light raking back across them. Creating nice side light is always a great idea. If you could please leave in the comments any go-to lighting setups that you have when photographing dancers or athletes, that would be great, because I'm sure the other people watching this video would love to get more ideas of how they could photograph subjects like this when they're doing these type of artistic shoots. Also, if you could please like, subscribe, and sign up for the bell, I would really appreciate it. And if you want to take your learning to the next level, you could check out my lighting handbooks at johngress.com/lightinghandbooks. Or you could attend an in-person workshop, and you can find out more information about those at johngress.com/workshops. Thank you so much for your time. I hope that you have a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you soon.